session, we're looking at, as I was introducing, what are the insights and what are the measures and the simple methods that we can use to evaluate crowdsourcing and crowdfunding activities, and methods that can be really used across the sector quite easily. And so I was just, what I wanted to do is really to introduce what the aim of our evaluation has been so far, and the methods used to collect some of the data that are presented this morning. So the aim was first of all to understand the participants we were working with, their profile, but also how our group of contributors had been building through time. The second was to relate participant profile and motivations as much as possible to participant behavior. And the second was really to explore the value, if we want to put it that way, or actually benefits, limitations in relation to a sustainability issue, if we, as we've done so far, understand value in that sense, can be assessed, and value for different people participating, including institutions, individuals, but also for the environment we work with. So heritage more widely, higher education, and the field, in our case of archaeology and history, so where we were developing methods that were already there, but actually, as sometimes happens with innovation in practice, and innovation of process rather than outputs, with small baby steps, whether we were doing something slightly different and the value of it. I think, as we will hear also later, other crowdsourcing projects have published and have done research about their participants. Zooniverse has, we'll hear a team about the transfer inventum. I think there are two big challenges when evaluating these kinds of projects. One is the fear to disincentivize contributors. And this is very true for that long tail, or might be for that long tail of participants who are just contributing a few tasks, but it's not as much for those who are slightly more involved. Because, for example, going back to also non-digital survey research, motivation is a huge component, and the context of the survey, in the context of the administration of the survey. So paradoxically, even though we've asked them already quite a bit, they would be willing also, and for that very reason, because they're very involved, they would also be willing to participate in the evaluation. And that applies also to the crowdfunding, specifically. The other challenge is that of having some longitudinal data. So not to do cross-sectional studies that break participation at a certain point, but to be able to have some data for the whole duration of the process, so that we don't, because that is what actually is meaningful. And I'm hoping that also Jim will talk about that, because Zooniverse has been running for a few years. We have been working for almost a year and a half now, and a lot of the platforms have been open for almost a year and a half. And that's something that we tried to tackle. So how do we collect data throughout? Actually, there's a third point, which is understanding evaluation when it's related, not as something that comes at the end, but something that is devised at the start, so that is planned together with the project and is ready to launch when the project is ready to launch, because otherwise we will inevitably miss some data in the long run. How did we collect data? So there, in various ways. We have tried to and experimented with surveys on-platform surveys. One that was budgeted to appear after the completion of the first task that contributors are doing, and the second survey would appear after the 25th task. For a number of reasons, the first survey was asking age breakdown, and whether the person was working or not with archaeology or history as part of the main job they do for a living, which is another way of which is a way of describing what sometimes in the traditional terms has been described as professional, but actually what we were really interested in was whether basically they were already working as part of their main job with that specific subject or not. And then comments, but also how they had heard about the platform. So what were the circumstances that facilitated their participation? And the second survey was more motivational, and also asked more data about their occupation and occupational data, including people were active, the kind of job that they were doing. The first survey was really useful to build, to have some quantitative data, and to be able to say something of some statistical significance about the people we have been working with in terms of, again, whether or not they were within the sector or not, and about the age breakdown, and also circumstances facilitating this engagement for different people. The second survey was less, I think, and so the first survey was really effective in collecting this data in a longitudinal way. The second was more problematic, because, well, not more problematic, but asked motivational questions to what has appeared to be a smaller number of contributors, because people who are doing more than 25 tasks are not that many in general. So some of the basically responses in relation to the motivational question were also, for example, revealed insights that we could also see, for example, through the forum or through emails. But again, I think that the fact of having the survey systematically asking these things throughout introduces a level of, in a way, consistency in the way this kind of information has been collected. So for the first survey, we had more than 700 responses out of about 1,400 active members, contributors, and deleting the repeats. Because looking, sometimes if people had disabled, for example, the cookie that was built also, they were presented that survey more than once. But so what I did with that was just cleaning the data by looking at their email addresses. It appeared in 4 to 5 cases that there were a couple of repeats. Anyway, it's just the bulk of the data was already cleaned by further, looked into it to clean further. The second survey, with that we were able to collect, I think, over 50, between 50 and 60 valid responses. And this also goes back to the problem of answering what Dominic's question this morning was, how we relate demographics with the motivational, because that's what really the sector needs. And it's something that the demographics is still effectively collected through the quantitative survey after the first task. The motivational remains more qualitative in terms of how the number of answers that we can collect. I think I'm reaching my 10 minutes, but something else that I wanted to say, just briefly, is that we've been integrating this data that I have presented, this survey data, with participant behavior on the platform, simply by, in a very simple way, mining some of the mining the tasks that they had done, and being able, through the tasks that had been completed, to know more about when certain tasks were submitted, and then doing a number of analyses that you have seen in the exercise plots and the other charts that I had introduced this morning. Plus a more qualitative element of looking at what was posted on the forum, emails, and with I also called all the more involved contributors and had interviews like from half an hour to an hour long with them to further understand why they were participating and who they were. So to just wrap up, I think my main points would be how to address the longitudinality of it, getting away with the fear of in a way disturbing the participation, but getting the right balance between engagement and evaluation. And third, how do we mix the quantitative and the qualitative, bearing in mind that evaluation needs to be started at the front. Measures, profile, motivations, behavior in relation to value, so the outputs that have been produced in relation to sustainability. Methods, certainly the first survey has worked. The second, I think, would need to be rethought of a little bit in terms of how we're using it and improved. And the other methods so far, I think, have been, so looking at the forum and other resources in a more qualitative way have also been useful. This is it for me. And I'll just end.
Sure.
Yeah.